I am hard-pressed to think of a span in time in which Donald Trump has faced more humiliations than he has in the past 72 hours. It is losses in court. It is nationwide protests at a historic level. It is an empty crowd for his birthday. And the tantrum that he is throwing following it only makes it all the much worse. Because when speaking with Prime Minister Mark Carney today, Donald Trump was caught on video talking about his parade, telling a lie so egregious about it that you could see the Prime Minister laughing. It was embarrassing. We're going to get into it, but I first want to start with the other really humiliating news, which is more than anything embarrassing for America. The latest Trump product that is being launched on Fox by his sons in two clips. But first, let's start with this ridiculous one before we get into Carney.
This morning, you've got an announcement on a new phone. Tell me about that and what you're looking to, quote unquote, correct here.
Yeah. Well, you know what, Maria, more and more we're using technology as a company, right, to correct the problems. Obviously, Truth Social was to correct freedom of speech, right? I mean, he lost his throughout the political process. Obviously, crypto, and we've got the biggest projects in crypto, was to correct another problem, which is the fact that they were debanking all conservatives. I was the most canceled person probably in the history of the country. And now we're doing Trump Mobile, and Trump Mobile is going to revolutionize cell phones, mobile calling. We're going to do it better. We're going to do it safer. We're going to have more functionality, more features. And the coolest thing about all these ventures is we're doing it right here in the United States. You're not calling up call centers in Bangladesh. You're not, you're doing it right out of St. Louis, Missouri. And you're going to have phones that are made right here in the United States of America. And it's going to be cheaper, $47 a month. You're going to have more international dialing for free, hundreds of countries, international dialing for free.
He is the president of the United States, and he has used his seat of power to send billions of dollars to a crypto meme coin, a useless stable coin, and it's still not enough for him. He has to launch a new product, a new garbage product, which, by the way, the real reason why Donald Trump is coming out with Trump phones, we will see from Don Jr. But is this not humiliating? This is what our country has to deal with on the world stage. As the G7 is convening, world leaders look at us and see the president announcing his phone. I'm embarrassed. But it only gets worse as Don Jr. gave away the game of what these phones are really about, and it is incredibly scary. Then we're, of course, going to check out Mark Carney and the other embarrassment of the United States on the world stage we're seeing.
A brand new Trump device made here in the United States of America. St. Louis. Why did you pick St. Louis, Don?
Well, listen, we're going to be having call centers for Trump Mobile in St. Louis, so we're keeping our data onshore. We're going to be manufacturing the phones. Again, you can keep your existing phone, obviously, if you want to, but if you want, American hardware built by Americans here in America without the potential, let's call it, backdoor into the hardware that some of our adversaries may have installed in there. It's really about everything we're doing, Benny. You know that, it's America first, making sure our things are as secure as they can, create value for people in America, create jobs for Americans. We're just excited about it.
So part of the pitch of the Trump phone is that it's made in America, but it's not, because obviously it isn't. It would be, one, too expensive, two, too much of a piece of garbage because we can't make phones in America. But also, Donald Trump doesn't care about making things at home. It's why we saw a mass exodus of manufacturing during his first administration. But the data center is in America because that is what Trump really cares about. It's why he's working with Palantir to make sure he can create this surveillance state he so desperately desires. And now he'll be stealing your data through the Trump phone. It is embarrassing, but not as embarrassing as Trump melting down over his parade. Now, this clip has very low audio, so I'm playing it as high as possible, but really listen to what Trump said about his parade and the reaction from Mark Carney.
We got the program to everybody. Is it 100% chance of rain? I thought it was supposed to be. But the past 50 years it was. Okay, thank you.
Midas Touch managing digital editor Asen wrote, Trump to Carney. We had the parade the other day. They said 100% chance of rain. It didn't rain, but it did rain. We saw photos of it raining. It was very clearly raining. There was a photo of you with the glass screen in front of you covered in water. There was mud in front of the empty crowd. What are you talking about? It wasn't raining. It literally rained on your parade. And I guess Trump can't, make up numbers, although they've tried to claim that 250,000 people were there. But I guess now he's making up fake weather reports to justify why it was such a great time. And as Trump continued to talk, ostensibly whining about the parade, again, the audio was very low. It was caught, that audio, that hot mic, so you could barely hear what they were saying. But Carney just laughing as he's talking about the parade. You also did see Mark Carney try to say, yeah, it was a good parade, Donald. Okay, and in his mind, he just must be like, oh my God, how do I have to deal with this guy? But really, I don't think there are many leaders on the world stage better at dealing with Donald Trump than Mark Carney. He's gotten him to drop the Governor Act. He's gotten him to drop the 51st state BS. Mark Carney is clearly playing Trump, but the fact that he was just laughing as he continues to talk about the parade, this is such an embarrassment, and it'll just keep on going. But what was not an embarrassment of our country on the world stage, what was in fact one of the proudest moments of this presidency so far, which has not had a lot of those, was the response to the parade, of course, the No Kings protest. And someone who I am a big fan of and we have spoken to on this show went on with Jen Psaki to talk about that last night, what we saw in New York City, and that is New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani. If you are a voter in New York, make sure you rank Zohran number one. Do not rank Andrew Cuomo. But let's hear from Zohran Mamdani.
It was incredible to see so many New Yorkers from across the 5 boroughs come out and make it clear that there are no kings in this country and that they mean that pertaining not only to Donald Trump, but also to Andrew Cuomo and the billionaires who fund both of their campaigns. And what was so lovely is that this is what makes so many proud to be New Yorkers, proud to be Americans, is engaging in that First Amendment right and seeing that there are far more people who feel passionately about that than there are those who come to Donald Trump's military parades.
We've been covering and trying to show both the protests across the country in places like New York City and Oakland and others where they were big and they were peaceful, and there wasn't the type of back and forth pushback, or the pushback really from not elected officials, but from the police there that we've seen, and that was happening there, not in other places. My point. Sorry, long day, but I wanted to ask you about it. It took on a completely different light. I mean, the importance of what happened in New York City and other cities today, given what we've seen in Los Angeles and given what we've seen with the National Guard and the Marines and kind of the aggressive force that we've seen there. How concerned are you? I mean, the plan of the Trump administration is to not allow this to stay in LA. They want to do it other places. How concerned are you about that happening in your city?
I think you're absolutely right that whatever they do in one part of the country is a test case for what they can do elsewhere in the country. And I think as tempting as it is to think of that repression as solely coming from Washington, we also see examples of police departments who are echoing that kind of repression. And I've been troubled by the fact that under Eric Adams' mayoralty, we've seen NYPD officers often assist ICE in their own activities. Recently we had ICE agents who were arresting migrants at their regular check-ins at Federal Plaza, just a few blocks from where I got my citizenship many years ago, and there was a pastor who was peacefully observing that arrest, and the NYPD arrested that pastor. These are the actions of a mayoral administration that has been seeking to collaborate with Donald Trump, and what gives me great concern about Andrew Cuomo is that he's being funded by the same Republican billionaires who have called these kinds of actions historic. And what we need in New York City is a mayor who can look authoritarianism in the eye and not see a reflection of themselves, a mayor who can call this what it is and then actually lay out a plan to fight it. And that's what I'm running on is a campaign to finally bring back a sense of belief in the law, because no matter that Donald Trump thinks it's merely a suggestion, we know that this is actually how we can uplift and uphold our Constitution.
That sounds very powerful. It is very powerful. But let's play this out. So you're mayor. The early voting has already started. The primary is coming up next week. Let's say you're the mayor, and he sends the National Guard to New York City. What do you do?
I think the first thing I do is work with Governor Hochul, who has shown herself to be able to fight back against Donald Trump's overreach into our state time and time again. And especially when we know that the president deploying the National Guard is something that goes against historical precedent, when this is typically something a governor requests. The second is to ensure that we still continue to turn to the courts, because often what Donald Trump and the Republican Party do is they issue illegal actions and illegal executive orders, and then they ask that the rest of the country simply presume them to be legal. And what we need to do is ensure that we continue to allow the courts to play a significant role. And one thing that has been greatly troubling for me as a New Yorker is to see a New Yorker today, Mahmoud Khalil, continue to languish in an ICE detention facility even after the courts have called his detention something that is unlawful.
No question about that. I know, and tomorrow is Father's Day, and I think he would, of course, love to be with his child tomorrow. I would just note. Let me ask you, what was your takeaway? I mean, it's been a day full of tragedy in Minnesota. It is very disturbing to see military tanks going down the city that I live in, down the streets of the city. What was your take about the military parade we saw today, and what I would consider politicization of the military and the men and women serving?
I think you're absolutely right in the way you've characterized it. It is sadly yet another example of the authoritarian bent of the Trump administration. And we have to see that same politicization in the deployment of the National Guard and the deployment of Marines, and ultimately in an attempt to continue to accumulate power. But what we actually also saw today was that there are far more Americans across the country, in both the states that we would imagine and the ones that were surprising to us, who believe more deeply in the First Amendment, in the Constitution, in the rule of law in this country than they do in the ability of a wannabe dictator to continue to assemble more power. And that continues to inspire me, and I know it inspires so many others to remember that actually we are a part of the majority when we fight for the rights of our neighbors and the rights of Americans across this country.
Zoran is exactly the type of leader that we need. Someone with an aspirational vision, someone who has built coalition, not just in his work as a state assembly member, but with the other candidates in this race, cross-endorsed by Adrian Adams, Brad Lander, Zelnor Myrie. Zoran has built the coalition. The coalition against billionaires buying our elections, the same billionaires who funded Donald Trump are funding Andrew Cuomo. It is time to tell them no. Zoran will be the one to do it. I hope you can support him. If you are in New York, early voting has already started. I encourage you to get out there. We're going to keep talking about all the different ways we are battling back against this Trump administration. Sometimes we'll have a little extra fun with it, as we did with Mark Carney. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.